Marcus Williams stood at attention outside the grand military auditorium, his dress blue uniform perfectly pressed and his medals gleaming under the afternoon sun. Today marked his retirement ceremony after 22 years of dedicated service to the United States Marine Corps. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, earned a Purple Heart, and mentored countless young Marines throughout his career. This ceremony was supposed to be his moment of honor, a celebration of his sacrifice and dedication to his country. The auditorium buzzed with activity as family members, fellow servicemen, and military officials arrived for the formal ceremony. Marcus had invited his wife Sarah, his teenage daughter Ashley, and his elderly mother who had traveled from Georgia to witness this important milestone. His unit brothers were already inside, having arrived early to secure good seats for the occasion. As Marcus approached the main entrance, 2 civilian security guards stepped forward to block his path. They wore crisp white shirts with security badges and carried themselves with an air of authority that seemed misplaced for their role. The taller guard, a man in his 40s with graying hair, looked Marcus up and down with obvious disdain. "Excuse me, where do you think you're going?" the guard asked, his voice carrying a tone that immediately put Marcus on edge. The question seemed absurd, given that Marcus was clearly dressed in full military regalia and approaching what was obviously a military ceremony. Marcus maintained his composure, drawing on years of military discipline. "I'm here for the retirement ceremony. This is my ceremony. Actually," he spoke clearly and respectfully, assuming there had been some kind of misunderstanding that could be quickly resolved. The second guard, younger but equally stern, shook his head dismissively. "We don't have any information about you being on the list. You need to leave the premises immediately." His words carried an edge of hostility that seemed entirely unprovoked and inappropriate for the situation. Marcus felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his voice steady. "There must be some mistake. I'm Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Williams, United States Marine Corps. This is my retirement ceremony. My family is already inside waiting for me." He reached into his jacket pocket to retrieve his military identification, hoping to clear up what he assumed was a simple administrative error. "We don't care what you claim to be," the taller guard interrupted before Marcus could produce his ID. "You're not welcome here. This is a private event for military personnel only." The irony of his statement was lost on him completely, as he was denying entry to the very person being honored at the ceremony. The situation began to attract attention from other attendees who were entering the building. Several fellow Marines noticed the commotion and began to gather nearby, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern as they realized what was happening. Marcus could see his wife Sarah through the glass doors, looking confused and worried as she watched the interaction unfold. "Gentlemen, I understand you're doing your job, but there's clearly been a misunderstanding," Marcus said, his patience beginning to wear thin despite his training. "I can provide identification, and I'm sure we can contact the ceremony coordinator to resolve this quickly." The guards exchanged a look that Marcus found disturbing. It was a look of satisfaction, as if they were enjoying the power they held over him in this moment. The younger guard stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space in what was clearly an intimidation tactic. "Listen carefully," the guard said, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "We've had problems with people like you trying to sneak into these events before. You're not fooling anyone with that costume. Real Marines don't look like you." The racial undertones in his comment were unmistakable, and Marcus felt the familiar sting of discrimination that he had hoped to leave behind in civilian life. Marcus had faced combat in foreign countries, had been shot at by enemy forces, and had lost friends in service to his nation. But standing here, being denied entry to his own retirement ceremony because of the color of his skin, felt like one of the most challenging moments of his military career. The injustice burned in his chest, but his training kept him from responding with the anger he felt building inside. Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to verify my identity and allow me entry to my own ceremony, Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of his rank despite the humiliating circumstances. My commanding officer is inside, along with my family and fellow Marines who are expecting me. The older guard laughed coldly. Your ceremony? That's rich. Like we're going to fall for that story. Security, he called out, apparently summoning additional personnel to remove Marcus from the premises. As the guards moved to physically escort Marcus away from the building, neither of them noticed the 6 figures who had quietly emerged from the side entrance of the auditorium. These men moved with the fluid, purposeful grace that came from years of specialized training. They were Navy SEALs, members of one of the most elite fighting forces in the world, and they had witnessed the entire interaction with growing disbelief and anger. The lead SEAL, a compact man with steel-gray eyes, and the weathered look of someone who had seen action in the world's most dangerous places, stepped forward first. His dress uniform was immaculate, and the array of ribbons and decorations on his chest spoke to a career filled with classified missions and heroic actions that would never be fully known to the public. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of barely controlled fury. The other 5 SEALs flanked him in a loose formation that any military person would recognize as a tactical positioning. These were men who had operated in the shadows, who had eliminated high-value targets and rescued hostages in hostile territory. They were not men to be trifled with. The guards turned to face the new arrivals, clearly annoyed by the interruption. They failed to recognize the significance of who they were now confronting, or the gravity of their mistake in humiliating a fellow warrior in front of his brothers in arms. The tension in the air was palpable as the situation balanced on a knife's edge, with Marcus's dignity and honor hanging in the balance. The older security guard turned to face the 6 SEALs with obvious irritation, completely unaware that he was about to make the biggest mistake of his career. His arrogance had blinded him to the dangerous situation he was creating, and he failed to read the warning signs in the body language of the elite warriors standing before him. "This doesn't concern you," the guard said dismissively, waving his hand as if shooing away unwanted visitors. "We're handling a security situation here. Move along." His casual dismissal of 6 of America's most elite fighters would have been comical if the circumstances weren't so serious. The lead SEAL, whose name tag read Commander Mitchell, took a step closer to the guards. His movements were deliberate and controlled, like a predator sizing up its prey. Years of combat experience had taught him to read people quickly and accurately, and what he saw in these guards disgusted him. "Actually, this concerns us very much," Commander Mitchell said, his voice remaining calm but taking on an edge that would have warned any sensible person to back down immediately. "This Marine is our guest of honor tonight. He's being celebrated for 22 years of distinguished service to our country." The younger guard laughed mockingly, apparently emboldened by his partner's confrontational stance. "Guest of honor? You guys must be confused. This man is trying to crash a private military event. We were just about to escort him off the property." SEAL team member Rodriguez, a Hispanic man with the build of a professional athlete, stepped forward beside his commander. His dark eyes flashed with anger as he spoke. "Escort him off the property? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? This is Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Williams, Purple Heart recipient and one of the finest Marines to ever serve." The guards exchanged uncertain glances for the first time since the confrontation began. They were starting to sense that something wasn't quite right about the situation, but their pride and prejudice prevented them from backing down gracefully. "Look, we don't know what game you're all playing," the older guard said, his voice becoming more defensive. "But we have our orders. No unauthorized personnel are allowed in the building. This man doesn't belong here." Commander Mitchell's expression hardened into something that would have terrified enemy combatants in a dozen different countries. "Doesn't belong here? Let me explain something to you about belonging. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout could have managed. Gunnery Sergeant Williams has bled for this country. He's carried wounded comrades to safety under enemy fire. He's spent holidays away from his family, sleeping in foxholes and eating rations, so that people like you could sleep safely in your beds at night. Each word was delivered with surgical precision, designed to cut deep into the guard's consciousness. SEAL Operator Jackson, a tall African-American man with the quiet intensity of a coiled spring, moved to Marcus's side. He's earned the right to be at any military ceremony in this country. In fact, we should all be honored that he's willing to share his special day with us. The crowd of military personnel and family members had grown larger as word of the confrontation spread throughout the building. Officers of various ranks had emerged to see what was causing the disturbance, and their expressions ranged from confusion to outrage as they witnessed the scene unfolding before them. Colonel Henderson, the base commander who was supposed to present Marcus with his retirement honors, pushed through the crowd with his aide following close behind. His face was flushed with anger as he took in the situation, and his voice carried the authority of absolute command when he spoke. "What in God's name is going on here?" he demanded, his eyes focusing on the two security guards who suddenly looked much less confident than they had moments before. The arrival of such high-ranking officers made it clear that this was no ordinary security incident. The older guard, now visibly nervous, attempted to explain their actions. "Sir, we were following protocol. This individual was attempting to gain unauthorized access to a classified military event. We were simply doing our job." Colonel Henderson's expression shifted to one of pure disbelief. "Unauthorized access? This is Gunnery Sergeant Williams's retirement ceremony. He's the guest of honor. How could he possibly have unauthorized access to his own event?" The younger guard, realizing that their position was becoming increasingly untenable, tried a different approach. "We weren't informed about any exceptions to the security protocol. We were told to check everyone and deny entry to anyone who seemed suspicious." Commander Mitchell stepped forward again, his patience finally exhausted. "Suspicious? What exactly did you find suspicious about a Marine in dress uniform arriving at a military ceremony? Was it his medals, his obvious military bearing, or was it something else entirely?" The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud, and everyone present understood exactly what the commander was suggesting. The racial motivation behind the guards' actions was becoming impossible to deny, and the witnesses were beginning to murmur among themselves in disgust. SEAL Operator Thompson, a red-headed man with the compact build of a wrestler, shook his head in dismay. "In all my years of service, in all the hellholes I've fought in around the world, I've never been more ashamed to wear this uniform than I am right now. Not because of what we've done, but because of what we're allowing to happen to one of our own." Marcus, who had remained silent during much of the exchange, finally spoke up. His voice was steady but carried the weight of deep disappointment. "Gentlemen, I've fought for this country and I've seen the worst that humanity has to offer. But I never expected to face this kind of treatment on what should be one of the proudest days of my life." The security guards were now surrounded by increasingly hostile military personnel, their earlier confidence completely evaporated. They found themselves facing not just the 6 SEALs, but a growing crowd of Marines, sailors, and officers who were united in their outrage over the treatment of their brother-in-arms. Colonel Henderson turned to address the guards with the full force of his authority. "You two are relieved of duty immediately. Your company will be hearing from me, and I can guarantee that your actions today will have serious consequences. No one, and I mean no one, treats our servicemen with such disrespect on my watch." The older guard made one last desperate attempt to justify their actions. "Sir, we were just following orders. We didn't know—" "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," interrupted SEAL Operator Martinez, his accent thick with emotion. "You saw what you expected to see, and you acted on your prejudices instead of doing your job professionally." Commander Mitchell nodded grimly. "Following orders is no excuse for this kind of behavior. Good soldiers and good security personnel use their judgment and treat all people with basic respect and dignity." As the gravity of their situation finally sank in, both guards began to realize that their careers in security were likely over. They had humiliated a decorated veteran in front of his peers and family, and there would be consequences that would follow them for the rest of their professional lives. The atmosphere around the military auditorium had completely shifted as more personnel gathered to witness the unfolding drama. What had started as a routine retirement ceremony was now becoming a defining moment about respect, brotherhood, and the true meaning of military service. The 6 SEALs stood in unwavering solidarity with Marcus, their presence serving as a powerful reminder of the bonds that unite all who serve. Commander Mitchell stepped directly in front of the 2 security guards, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Let me make something absolutely clear to both of you. What you've done here today isn't just unprofessional conduct. It's a betrayal of everything this uniform represents." He gestured to the assembled military personnel around them. "Every person here has sworn an oath to protect and defend this nation, regardless of the color of their skin." The older guard, now visibly shaking, attempted one final justification. "We were hired to provide security. We thought we were protecting the event from unauthorized intrusion." His words sounded hollow even to his own ears. And the excuse fell flat in the face of overwhelming evidence of his discriminatory behavior. SEAL Operator Rodriguez shook his head in disgust. "Protection? You were hired to check credentials and maintain order, not to act as judge and jury based on your personal prejudices. Gunnery Sergeant Williams has more right to be here than almost anyone else in attendance." Colonel Henderson had heard enough. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call to the security company's management, his voice carrying clearly across the crowd. "This is Colonel Henderson at the base. I need to speak to your supervisor immediately regarding the conduct of your personnel at our ceremony today. 2 of your guards have created an incident that will require immediate investigation and action." As the colonel spoke on the phone, the crowd of military personnel began to organize themselves into a formation of respect around Marcus. Without any formal command being given, Marines, sailors, and other servicemen naturally fell into ranks, creating an honor guard that stretched from the building entrance to where Marcus stood. The sight was deeply moving and spoke to the genuine brotherhood that exists among those who have served their country. These men and women understood the sacrifices that Marcus had made throughout his career, and they were determined to ensure that his retirement ceremony would be remembered for the right reasons. Marcus's wife Sarah and daughter Ashley had emerged from the building, their faces showing a mixture of pride and concern as they watched the events unfold. Sarah approached her husband and took his hand, offering silent support during what had to be one of the most difficult moments of his military career. "Dad, are you okay?" Ashley asked, her young voice carrying a maturity beyond her years. She had grown up in a military family and understood the significance of what was happening, even if she couldn't fully comprehend the injustice her father had faced. Marcus squeezed his daughter's hand and managed a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Sometimes good people have to stand up to wrong behavior, and today we're seeing a lot of good people doing exactly that." His words were meant to reassure her, but they also served as a teaching moment about courage and standing up for what's right. Commander Mitchell turned back to address Marcus directly. "Gunnery Sergeant Williams, on behalf of the entire SEAL community, I want to apologize for what you've experienced today. Your service and sacrifice deserve better than this, and we're honored to call you our brother in arms." The other 5 SEALs stepped forward in unison, each offering Marcus a crisp salute that spoke volumes about their respect for his service. This gesture from some of the most elite warriors in the world carried deep meaning, and it wasn't lost on anyone present that these men had interrupted their own duties to stand up for what was right. SEAL Operator Jackson spoke for the group. "Sir, we've all served in different branches and in different wars, but we've all sworn the same oath and we've all bled the same red blood for this country. What happened here today is exactly the kind of injustice that we fight against, whether it's overseas or right here at home." Colonel Henderson finished his phone call and approached the security guards with a stern expression. "Your supervisor will be here within the hour to escort you off base property. Your security clearances are being revoked immediately, and your company is being removed from our approved vendor list. The contract for this event is terminated effective immediately." The younger guard finally seemed to understand the magnitude of their mistake. "Sir, if we could just explain our side of the story." "Your side of the story?" interrupted SEAL Operator Thompson, his voice rising with indignation. "Your side is that you saw a decorated Marine in full-dress uniform and decided he didn't belong at a military ceremony. There is no explanation that makes that acceptable." The crowd began to move as a unit toward the auditorium entrance, with the SEALs forming an honor escort around Marcus and his family. The symbolism was powerful and deliberate, demonstrating that the military community would not tolerate discrimination against any of its members. As they walked toward the building, Commander Mitchell addressed the gathered personnel. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we've witnessed something that should never happen to any serviceman or woman. But we've also witnessed something beautiful, the way our community comes together to protect and honor our own." The retirement ceremony that followed was unlike any that had been held at the base before. Word of the incident had spread throughout the military community, and attendance swelled far beyond what had been originally planned. Officers from multiple branches of service attended to show their support for Marcus and their opposition to the discrimination he had faced. When Marcus took the stage to accept his retirement honors, he received a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. The applause wasn't just for his years of service, but for the dignity and grace he had shown in the face of obvious prejudice. His acceptance speech was brief but powerful, focusing on the importance of treating all people with respect and the bonds that unite those who serve. The 6 SEALs remained throughout the entire ceremony, their presence serving as a reminder that the military is truly a brotherhood that transcends all artificial barriers. When Marcus's family approached them afterward to express their gratitude, Commander Mitchell's response was simple but profound. "Ma'am, we didn't do anything special today. We just did what any decent person should do when they see injustice happening. Your husband has earned our respect through his service, and he deserved to be treated with dignity." The security guards were escorted off base in disgrace, their careers in security effectively over. The incident became a teaching moment for the entire base community about the importance of treating all people with respect, regardless of their appearance or background. In the weeks that followed, Marcus received letters and calls from military personnel around the world who had heard about the incident. Many shared their own stories of discrimination and thanked him for handling the situation with such dignity. The incident, while painful, became a catalyst for important conversations about ensuring that all who serve are treated with the respect they deserve. The 6 SEALs maintained their friendship with Marcus and his family, and they were honored guests at his daughter's graduation and other family milestones. Their actions that day demonstrated that true warriors fight not just against foreign enemies, but against injustice wherever it appears. The story of that day became legendary within military circles, serving as a reminder that the bonds of brotherhood in the armed forces are stronger than any prejudice or discrimination. It showed that when good people stand together against injustice, they can create change and ensure that all who serve their country are treated with the dignity and respect they have earned through their sacrifice.